Well, good evening. Welcome to PJNET Live here on Friday night. I hope you enjoyed that errant bumper left over from our previous show. But it's always good to give Dell a shout out. Dell Didway. Dell Didway, by the way, he's with us every Tuesday night. And he's a very interesting guest. Glad to have him. But he's pretty active on Facebook, and he's really been pushing his appearance here on Facebook more and more. And more about that later. For tonight, we have, as usual, Friday night, we have American refugee Roger. Let me have, please, the Genie, if you would please drop down our monitors so that we can bring Roger on board right there. And now, there, the monitors are hanging there. Let's introduce Roger right now. He's in the green room in New Orleans, Louisiana. And Roger, it has been a busy week. I just want to kind of get some downtime. You know what I mean? Just some downtime. And what you been doing this week?
Well, I've been doing some research because we were going to do the show on education today. But yeah, you wanted some downtime, and I needed some too, because I kind of got bogged down in some of my research and was having a hard time condensing information into where it was going to be for a good show. So we're gonna go ahead and put that off a week, and we're gonna just talk about some of the events of this last week and how things are shaping up around the country. Mark,
it's been busy. Did you get a chance to put any feelers out? I got this email, and you never know about some of this stuff.
I did searches for it, Mark, and you're talking about an email where somebody told you that Facebook was going to no longer allow people to do targeted advertising to men or women. That you weren't going to be able to do that. And I did some searches on it, and I didn't come up with anything. And so it, as stupid as it would be, it wouldn't shock me. All a part of the war on gender and acting like, well, there's no difference between men and women, or we're all fluid anyway. Yeah. But it would be a really stupid thing for Facebook to do.
Yeah. I did. I was wondering today, I'm real excited that Casper Stockham from Colorado, who has run for congressional office in a very blue district, it's CD1, that's Denver. So, I mean, it's not it's not that disappointing that he didn't win, but, you got to throw your hat in the ring. But so I made this bumper, and he actually does a couple of podcasts. He's got his own little kind of studio set up, and but so I grabbed some footage from his campaign website, and of course I didn't want to, I had to slice it and dice it. So he was just, opinions and colorful, sound bites.
Right.
So I put it together and put it on, submitted it to YouTube. Now the deal there is when you do an ad campaign on YouTube, first you have to be the owner of the video that you submit. Okay. And it has to be a public video. So I make the little video, and you submit it as part of the campaign when you design the campaign with a bid and a daily budget and all that. But of course they have to approve it. Now, so when you first submit it, it is under review. Now, they don't really say what the criteria is in this review, which, I guess it just, whether it complies with their terms of service or community standards or what have you. But bottom line is, when I've done this in the past, and I'm still new at this, I'm still finding my way, but I'm learning. The approval would usually take 12 to 18 hours. Well,
okay.
The show starts Monday, and it's a promo for the show. 48 hours later, I'm like, huh? What is it? And I'm wondering, now they did sort of bitch slap me one time for doing I won't call it an ad. It was just a video, a composite for Rich Hobson, who was running for Congress in Alabama. I guess you could call it an ad, except that I wasn't being paid to do it. But
right.
I mean, so if I, or personally, or if the corporation by His Grace Ministries wants to say something in support of a political candidate, does that make it a political ad? That's a question.
I don't know, Mark. And then the other thing you got to realize is Facebook is busy expanding their definition of hate speech. They expanded it this week, and I don't have much patience for the ideas of white nationalism, but they decided that, they used to differentiate between white nationalism and white supremacy. Okay. And that, it was okay so long as people weren't putting down other races or claiming to be the super race to do channels about white nationalism, white pride, so on and so forth. And they've decided that they're going to bulk all that together with any type of racism or white supremacy. And so, white nationalism is now completely out as well. And no white pride. Now I wonder if that will simply morph into no European heritage, and I wonder if that will mean that there's no black pride shows.
We're getting into semantics now. I mean, the backdrop here is Facebook at the end of the day can make whatever rules they want to, in my opinion. You can choose whether or not to play on their playground. But you mentioned, okay, there's white supremacy. Well, wait a minute. I don't think that any race, white, black, yellow, green, purple, or otherwise, needs to engage in saying that they are a superior race. But that's on one side. On the other side, if they do, so what? What if somebody said that they, somebody who is not white, and I see them say that they are a superior race? Why? How is that harming me? They're just expressing an errant opinion, in my opinion. So is it wrong to have an opinion that says, funny? I was at work the other day, and the guy who we're pretty friendly, and he says, Mark, you think you're better than everybody else, don't you? and it kind of took me back, but I quickly gained my composure and said, yeah, actually, you're right. But I think I'm better than everybody else, but I know that the only thing that matters is the scoreboard at the end of the fourth quarter. I thought that's a pretty good comeback. So what's wrong with thinking, where's the line between healthy self-esteem as an individual or pride in a heritage of a cultural ethnic group?
Well, Mark,
wouldn't you think you're superior for your customs and traditions that you love? And wouldn't you think they're better? I mean, if you didn't think they're better, you wouldn't do them. You'd do something different, wouldn't you?
Mark, I turned this around on my son's mother, who is rather liberal, in a conversation not too long ago. Because when we were talking, I just happened to mention to her that I had seen this incredibly beautiful Asian woman. And she got very offended when I said that. She said, well, why does she have to be an Asian woman? I said, she doesn't have to be an Asian woman, except that she happened to be an Asian woman. And this woman that I saw was a very beautiful Asian woman. Well, what does Asian have to do with anything? Why do you have to bring that up? Why can't you just say Asian? And I said, well, it's just a descriptive term. It gives you an idea of what she looked like. And she yelled at me and told me how racist I was, and I let it pass.
Well, you're also sexist because you pointed out that it was a woman.
Mark, not 30 minutes later, because she was out walking in the neighborhood talking to me on the phone, she said, oh, Roger, I just saw the cutest beagle. And I said, why does it have to be a beagle? Why are you such a breedist? Why can't it just be a dog? And she actually cracked up laughing. Okay, I actually got through to her on some level by saying, but I kept, for the rest of the conversation, I kept telling her what a breedist she was.
Well, but as we continue down this semantic slippery slope, okay, so then we say, so white or other supremacist. I mean, I can see where people would take exception to that. I don't know if that's a threat to me if some other ethnic group thinks they are superior. That's just their opinion. What matters is the points on the board. Okay, I mean, so I don't feel harmed by that. So if I say something in like manner, I don't expect anybody else to feel harmed or threatened. Now, when you say white nationalists, now we're adding a little bit more acid to the mix, because when you say nationalists, what that sounds like to me is that we should have, or I say we, any group based on race should have our own sovereign nation.
Our own sovereign nation, and I don't agree with that, but it doesn't hurt me for people to talk about it. There are certainly, Farrakhan certainly believes in a black sovereign nation. Okay.
And how did any sovereign nation come to be?
Well,
all of them.
Right. War.
Force. Okay.
War.
Brute force. And they later legitimize. And I'm not saying any nation is bad, but the United States would not exist except that we went to war with the indigenous population that was here, and we won.
Well, hold up, Mark. I'm gonna draw a couple of things with you on that, because a couple of things, and I wouldn't do this if it wasn't for how ridiculous things have gotten. But the first thing that I want to point out is when they say the indigenous population, we've actually reached a point where now the record shows they've actually found remains of Vikings that were here long before the Indians were.
And they were a bunch of nice guys. Yeah.
But what I'm commenting is apparently they didn't come in big numbers. And they died off. Who knows? Maybe the Indians even killed them off.
Well, and how did the Indians become indigenous? Well, they probably fought somebody else and won.
Right.
So the idea.
And they didn't start here either, Mark, at all. It pretty much appears that the Garden of Eden was somewhere around the Middle East. Okay, northern part of Africa, probably, and human beings spread out around the planet. Okay, and they spread out around the planet, and everybody came here at some point. Yeah. But I would also argue that, okay, when we talk about our history with the Indians, and certainly there were some atrocities and there were some things wrong, but first of all, the Indians had the American Indians had a very strange way of doing things to us. Totally different from white Europeans. White Europeans believed in fences and flags
and private property, which
and we believed in that, and we were used to people made a claim and they put up a fence. Well, the Indians didn't put up any fence and they didn't put up any flag. But the other thing is, the Indians, while they didn't necessarily believe in property, they certainly believed in property that only their tribe and only their race had access to. They're tribal, and it was vast swaths of land that they didn't even usually occupy. They had places where they spent every other spring, and they had places where they spent every other summer, and they would have these vast swaths of land, and then they would get into wars with other tribes.
Absolutely.
We were just another group of people who came up and joined in the fight, and perhaps had they had the good sense to put up a few fences and some flags, we would have respected, oh, wow, that's this guy's territory, okay? It's definable. It's this little 10-square-mile area. We get that, okay? And they got a fence around it, and they got a flag.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go try to trade with them. But,
the bottom line, and that's very colorful, but the bottom line is every sovereign nation was basically birthed by the use of force, except one.
Well, wasn't it birthed by the use of force as well?
Well, indirectly.
What are you going to say? See if you're saying what I think you're going to say.
It was proclaimed by international declaration.
Oh, that's true. But that very same nation, when it was initially proclaimed in existence by God, what did God's people still have to do to claim it?
Take it. Who was already there?
They had to take it, okay? God didn't give them a completely empty piece of land, okay? And so initially there was war, and what happened shortly after the United Nations then declared Israel to exist? Various peoples who, and it's interesting because Palestine had never been a nation. Palestine had always been a region. Okay, and it was a region. It's like saying the Sahara. Okay, and Palestine was a region, and there were different things. But then all of a sudden, people who at this time considered themselves to be the indigenous peoples of the area, okay, and just as others had considered themselves to be the indigenous peoples of the area at a later time, had a problem with that, and you pretty quickly had a war.
Yeah, and then you inject God into the equation. Because even here in the United States, this nation was founded on many Christian principles by many Christians, but the expansion to the west had to be legitimated by God. Okay, so they came up with this idea of manifest destiny, and sold it.
And sold it. Yeah, sold it. The Brits also came up with the white man's burden and sold it. Okay, you know, it was the white man's burden to go and civilize the uncivilized peoples of the world. You know what's interesting about Israel today, Mark? You know the one group that is exempt from compulsory military service in Israel?
No.
The most orthodox of the Jews. Do you know why?
Are they conscientious objectors, or will it make them ceremoniously unclean? I don't know.
They are not. They are not. But the most orthodox of the Jews, they've made this exception for them, because the most orthodox of the Jews do not consider the current state of Israel to be legitimate, because they only think it would come when the Messiah came, and they don't believe the Messiah has come. Okay, and they believe the Messiah's coming is how the new Israel gets established.
Okay,
and because that's a deeply held religious belief, the government has said, okay, we're not going to make you join.
I can see their point of view. My pastor has a similar regard for the not question, but you know, the existence of Israel, and he's visited Israel, and he, you know, but you know, he thinks, or he expresses that the, you know, the verse, you know, if is often commandeered and misapplied, but he basically says that Israel is a political nation state. It is a secular political nation state. Yes, it, you know, but it is governed in a way. He says, you know, don't read the Bible, and every time you see the word Israel, well, think Tel Aviv. That's right. That's a far cry from Jerusalem.
It is. It is.
You know, and Las Vegas is a far cry from, you know, Atlanta. You know, I mean, there's
exactly.
No but anyway, the semantic argument I was saying, we had, you know, if somebody claims they are some race is supreme, that's problematic, but not threatening in my mind. Then, but when you say nationalist, that now you've injected force as an ingredient in the recipe, if you truly take that to its logical conclusion. And I forget what you mentioned as the third layer, but I didn't write it down. So anyway,
right. Now let me tell you one of the problems, though, with us not being able to admit racial differences. First of all, in our own Bill of Rights, we talk about all men being created equal, and that never meant that all men were of the same intelligence. It never meant that we were of the same height, that we were of the same weight, that we were of the same athletic ability. It meant that we were all created by the same God and had the same God-given rights.
Right.
Okay? That's what it meant. And it did not guarantee an equality of outcome, but an equality of legal opportunity.
Well, okay? An equality of legal status, I would say. Of
legal status. There are very important reasons there are reasons why differences between the races happen over the course of years. And I'm going to use a dirty word right now, Mark, but I'm going to use it in its real sense, not its fake sense. And I'm going to explain that for a minute. I'm going to use the word evolution. Okay. No, Mark, one species does not evolve into another. And no, non-life did not evolve from life. But natural selection and random mutation are very real. And within species, there's evolution all the time. Within species. Okay, within species, there's evolution all the time.
Well, so let me say this. Humans have gotten taller in just the past couple hundred years.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. This is not in dispute. So is that evolution, random mutation? I don't know. Who cares?
Right.
You're starting to sound like Kent Hovind. Do you know who I'm talking about? Dr. Dino?
Oh, yeah. But anyway, but some of these differences can be important to study. When the bell curve came out a number of years ago, and these guys were liberals. These guys were liberal academics, okay? But they got slammed for talking about differences in IQ between the races, okay? And they fought back, fortunately, even though largely in the popular media they were shut down. But they said, no, 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 this is real and it's important to study. And they said, for example, if in the United States of America, you have a situation where the average IQ is 100,
and it is.
And it is. But when you include only whites, you find an average IQ of about 105, and you include only blacks, and you find an average IQ down around 93. And when you include only Asians, you actually find a slightly higher IQ than the average white. Mm-hmm. One of the things you can begin to do is ask the question, why? Now, if you're not so obsessed with IQ that you immediately think, well, the smarter somebody is, the more valuable they are, you get real angry. But no, we're not saying anything about value. We're saying that for some reason there's these differences, okay, within the United States. Now you can begin to ask questions like, what is the average diet of a white woman in the United States during her 9 months of pregnancy? What is the average prenatal care of a white woman in the United States during her 9 months of pregnancy? What is the average diet of the average black woman? What is her average level of prenatal care? What's going on with the Asians? Then you can start to realize some things like, there's some other things that happen. Mark, in the old days in particular, when we got immigrants, sometimes even when we got refugees, it tended to be the best of the best. Talk about survival of the fittest. It was the ones that were either ambitious and eager to immigrate and start a new life, who tended to be among the most intelligent, or it was the survivors within some group of beaten up people who tended to be the most intelligent.
Well, think about what you just said.
The Vietnamese that ended up in the United States were more intelligent on average than the Vietnamese that they were leaving behind in Vietnam.
Yeah,
okay?
That's why they got over here.
But admitting all of this, it opens up all kinds of areas for study and asking questions, and for what? Education, the topic of next week's show, and critical thinking, and being able to even go in and look at things. And when we get so upset and say, oh, you're claiming that this race is superior to that race, na, we can't study anymore.
Which goes back to my remark. How many points are on the scoreboard at the end of the fourth quarter? That's a metric. It doesn't matter if you agree or not. The points are there, or they're not there, whichever the case may be. You made an interesting comment, the ones that wanted to, quote, start a new life. Well, if you think about that, that implies that their old life had enough assets that could be liquidated to make the trip over here and start a new life.
Oh, yeah.
You had to
Mark, the Arabs that we get over here to come to college, they're the really, really smart guys. Okay. Yeah. Or they come from successful families where they can sell things and come over here and so on and so forth. Yeah. So, in fact, it's one of the reasons we did become such a great nation. Yes, it was immigration, but it was an immigration of the best of the best.
Well, in our own westward expansion, if you just take the canvas covered wagon, well, wait a minute. To make this journey, you had to provision. You have to get the wagon. You have to get the horse to pull the wagon. You have to put food in the wagon. I mean, this costs money.
So you already had some money. You already had some level of success.
Right. You had something to liquidate. There's probably people that never made that journey who didn't have the means to do it. So
you also
guess
had
what?
to be healthy, strong enough, hardy enough to make that journey.
Or if you didn't, you'd either get that way or get dead.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah. Okay. Good enough. So, I'm trying to think of some crazy things that happened. I did a search on Google for truthful statements from Jossie Collette, and it just said
Smollett. Yeah. Smollett. Yeah, you talking about Jossie?
And I don't know if we should even go there, but because anything we do is to speculate. But the only thing I can figure is a deal was made. And the name that comes to mind is Obama. And these kind of things happen quietly behind the scenes in all kinds of ways and across all kinds of cultures and all kinds of biases.
Yeah, but that deal included the Attorney General's office of the state. It didn't include the government in Chicago or the police department in Chicago, and they are furious.
Aren't they?
They are angry.
It's a frosty morning in Jamaica when I'm applauding Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, yeah. But let me say something else, Mark. Let me say one of the reasons it's so serious. It's not just the resources that were spent. It's that again and again and again, Mark, it seems like over half of these supposed hate crimes against conservatives turn out to be fake. And it shows you the degree of the war that's going on against conservatives and the degree of the anger. We have to talk a little bit about Trump, too. Look, they got the end of the Mueller investigation with them essentially having nothing, okay? After as hard as they dug, what it shows you is it shows you the level of the corruption in the system. I have a liberal sister we neither of us were Trump fans, but I didn't agree with what she said, which was, you know, before Trump ever got elected, which she said, well, if it actually starts to look like there's any serious chance that Donald Trump could be elected, I mean, the powers that be are going to have to take moves to prevent that from happening.
I said things like that.
And yeah, but they didn't. But she was talking about behind the scenes things, which is what happened. You had a fake dossier. You had, you know, and you know, basically the powers that be illegally spied on people, started an investigation for bogus reasons, and essentially really did try to carry out some sort of a coup and some kind of an overthrow of the voters' will. That's one of the ways in which Trump, in spite of himself, I think, has helped the country. Like, he was so hated that he's exposed some of the corruption that I think some other candidates would not have.
Well, he has an advantage from my perspective, because a lot of people will point out his moral low ground. Like, I watched a speech today that it presumably was today, where he said it was a bunch of bullshit. Well, see, I don't have this opinion that Trump was virtuous to begin with, so he doesn't lose any points for using foul language, because I never expected him to be virtuous to begin with.
No, exactly. We had a governor like that in Louisiana, Edwin Edwards. They finally put him in prison in the end. He got out. He's still alive. He's in his 90s. But he served 2 terms, went away for 4 years, came back, served another term. And Edwards was corrupt in some ways, okay? And Edwards loved the ladies, and Edwards gambled, yet he kept getting elected in a state like Louisiana, okay? And people would say, why? Well, he was incredibly upfront about it. I remember when 60 Minutes tried to do this big expose on Edwards. And Ed Bradley, the old black guy before he was dead, was interviewing Edwards. And he said, now, Governor, is it true that in such and such a year you gave so-and-so such and such a job in exchange for a $5,000 campaign contribution? And Edwards, in his Cajun accent, said, oh, no, that was a $10,000 campaign contribution for that job. Bradley is stunned, and he says, isn't that a bribe, Governor? And he said, interestingly enough, in Louisiana at that time, that was not illegal. Now, since that time, we've passed a law making it illegal, so, of course, I would never do it again. And then...
Don't you have a $5,000 gambling debt? Oh, no, it's 10.
Well, no, he moved on. The next thing that he moved on to was, Governor, there's a rumor that Caesar's Palace Casino actually sent a helicopter to Louisiana that landed at the governor's mansion and picked up $25,000 in cash. Yes, that's true. I had a very bad week on vacation in Las Vegas and taken out a lot of markers, and I lost heavily. Governor, don't you think it's unusual for a hotel helicopter to be lasting at a governor? Yes, I think it's most unusual. They went to him about the affairs, okay? And he was on his second wife at this point, who was much younger than him, and they were rumors of affairs. And they went to him about that. He said, one must only look at my wife to know, my beautiful wife, to know that I'm a ladies' man. And then Bradley's like, Governor, aren't politicians supposed to kiss babies? It's a lot more fun kissing ladies than it is kissing babies. And I ran for governor, not for pope. you know, like people were like, okay. You know, and
well, I was listening to some commentary from the left, and of course, now they're screaming that they're not satisfied with the summary. The summary was a whitewash. You know that they want to see the entire report unredacted. And,
we never got to see that for any investigation of Hillary Clinton.
Well,
but go ahead.
the commentary, and I don't know how much of this is true, but I'm fascinated just by the way people, and we do it, you know, we just cling to our beliefs that we're predisposed to, regardless of the evidence, you know, or the circumstances. Right. And the guy said, well, first of all, Trump himself made the first public, said make it all public as far as he's concerned. He said, but there's some real practical problems here, is there is classified stuff in there that needs to be kept secret. Now, the only legitimate, and they never made this point, the liberal person never made the point, is that guess who gets to do who makes the decisions on what is, you know, national security interest and not? Well, the president. Well, you know, I would have said, should children grade their own papers? You know, I mean, scores would go up if they did, wouldn't they?
Right.
So, you know, I'll grant that there is, you know, there certainly is the potential for him to redact personally damaging information based on that, rather than national security or classified information stuff. So I'll concede that point. But to say that now they're going to say there's a cover up, well, wait a minute. A lot of the investigation was public, and the summary says, let me go back. I don't really hold in. I have this this kind of weird. What's the right word I'm looking for? Anyway, Milo. I ambivalent was the word I was looking for.
Yes, and you just used that word exactly correctly.
Right.
Most people misuse that word to mean I don't
that
care, and it actually means I care very much both ways.
You love and hate. You know, the same object, like your football coach. You love him and you hate him.
Yeah, okay, I was mentioning to you, there's a transgendered blogger that I have incredibly ambivalent feelings towards.
But Milo was accused of being racist by a college professor.
I know what he said.
And well, the point he made was very cogent. Okay, he said, perhaps you don't know that I'm married to a black person. And he said, if that won't convince you, I don't think there is anything that would. That's the phrase that captured my attention. Okay, we are predisposed to believe certain things, and there at some point it doesn't matter what the facts are.
And
we're in a post-truth culture.
I'm not going to say what he has said in other situations like that.
Yeah, I know what you would have said. Yeah, don't say it.
I'm not going to
go on YouTube and see it yourself. Yeah, he said.
But yeah, he talks about what he enjoys doing in life.
Yeah, go on YouTube and see it yourself.
And it's but no, I certainly support Milo's right to speak. And Milo is certainly correct about some things. And yes, very, very ambivalent feelings about that guy.
Yeah, it's like Elton John. He's one of the greatest musicians. And I say, what you know, come on, man.
You know what I used to love about Elton John? It seems to be changing in his very old age, unfortunately. But one of the things I used to love about Elton John is that he used to absolutely refuse to get political. He absolutely refused to boycott Phoenix and not do a concert there when the LGBT community was upset about some laws there. And you know whose wedding he personally performed at? Whose last wedding reception he performed at? Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh's new bride was a big Elton John fan, and he went and he met with Rush and he met with his bride, and they came up with a playlist. And
but I have an ambivalence, you know. I admire his talent. Now, I think, by the way, he might want to consider retiring, you know, because he ain't got it no more. But you know how people hang on. But
Mark, you know who's playing in New Orleans in the middle of Jazz Fest, and they sold out all the tickets in 10 minutes at $200 a pop. But they needed to give it up a long time ago, whether you like them or not. But people are still willing to pay $200 a ticket to go see the Rolling Stones. And the Rolling Stones are going to play in front of a huge. They added a day to Jazz Fest, to the Jazz and Heritage Festival. And the way our Jazz and Heritage Festival works, there's a jazz stage, and there are a lot of jazz bands, and there's a ton of local music, but it also brings in music of all types from all over the world, and pop stars and country stars and this and that. It's a huge music and cultural festival. But they added an extra day to it this year just for the Rolling Stones to perform. And the tickets for Jazz Fest, like normally you can get these tickets for, you know, this day or that day or for the whole thing, but the tickets for the whole thing don't include the Rolling Stones concert.
Well, I'm not a big Rolling Stones fan, even in their
but they're
prime.
zombies.
But what's that got to do with jazz? I mean, tonight, you know, Hazards 4 is our host tonight, and he played. I'm not a jazz fan, but it is kind of relaxing, and it is kind of, you know, and it's just something different because.
I love jazz, and there's different types of jazz. It just grew over the years, and now what it's usually like is there'll be 4 stages at different parts of the arena, and one of them is a jazz stage, and there's tons of jazz bands that play. Then another one is a blues stage, and then a couple of the other stages are basically pop.
Right.
And
Rolling Stones,
you know
I don't see what the heck that's got to do with jazz. I really don't. But who cares?
Who cares?
It's
just an example of some people who, whether you liked them or hate them, should have retired a while ago.
Yeah, well, they Elvis Presley, by the way, stayed out of politics. Now, a little known, well, I want to say fact, but a little known presumed fact. Elvis was managed by the guy that they called the Colonel. And nobody knows much about the Colonel. But it is widely believed that the Colonel was an illegal immigrant because Elvis never appeared outside of the United States. He never performed outside because he would have been accompanied and he would have had to have a passport, you know, and it is widely believed. Was it the Colonel? What was his moniker? I'm thinking Kentucky Fried Chicken. But anyway, the guy that basically owned Elvis. I mean, he really
right.
And he was quite a colorful guy. But anyway, it's been a disappointing week, you know, and unfortunately, if you get on Facebook as I have been doing, and you get on Twitter and you get on, there's so much bad stuff going on out there. I try to find something encouraging, and I think some of the most encouraging things I saw was, you know, a mama German Shepherd, you know, just taking care of her offspring, you know, her little puppies.
Right.
I saw another interesting video with a Point Casper Stockham. Brought this one up. There were 2 like gazelles or antelopes or like that, and they were locking horns. And the photography, I mean, in the foreground was these 2 animals fighting. But the camera could see in the distance a lion approaching. Now, the other gazelles and animal, whatever the animal was, impalas, you know, you get the idea. Well, they, of course, could see, and they quickly scattered. But those 2 fighting, I'm going to just call them gazelles, you know, they kept fighting until the lion showed up, and they perished. Powerful message in that one.
Powerful message. And I'm going to close on an interesting thing. Very powerful message in this, and you remind me of it. This was really interesting when I learned about this. You remember the huge tsunami a number of years ago that killed over 100,000 people?
Yes.
Well, when they went in, and
it was 1.5 million.
Yeah, it was. It was. Excuse me. It was
the Christmas Eve one out in Polynesia.
Right. When they went in and started clearing it out, and they were expecting to clear out just these huge hordes of bodies of animals, there were like no bodies of animals. None of the animals were dead. It had basically not killed any animals. They were finding less dead animals than they would have expected to find if they were going through the area if nothing had happened. And in some of the research that's come out about that and why that is, it was the elephants. The elephants, who have incredible hearing and are very wise, heard the tsunami coming from a long way away and ran away. And every species on Earth freaks out and gets scared if the elephants are running away. If the elephants are running away, they say, "Oh my God!" and then they take off.
Well,
Okay?
I'm not a big animal lover, but it's hard to watch some of this stuff and not be like that story. I'm in awe because I've had some personal encounters. I used to take my dog to work with me, a Labrador Retriever, and one day a different UPS driver, a relief driver, came to deliver, and my dog did not like him. And one can't help, and he's friendly to everybody. You know, this was not a dog given to that kind of behavior. But you wonder sometimes, what does that dog know?
Oh, I trust my dog's instincts on people.
You know, I mean, and you think, God, thank you, you know, for giving us these creatures that love us so much. The other one that really blew me away, I saw on YouTube. Actually, I'm a sociology expert. Okay, I have studied it in college. Okay, elephants are most socially like humans. They are the most social animal outside of humans. And they were a family, for lack of a better word, was vacating an area that was dry. Well, one of the babies had developed, well, he was starving. And the baby eventually just fell, and the mother stayed there. And it's just hard for a tough guy like me to even talk about this because it just gets to me. That mom stayed there with her baby. Well, the baby was dead, and the mom knew it. Well, soon it won't be long before the, you know, hyenas and, you know, predators. That mama fought them off for the longest time. But at some point they were overwhelming, and you know, it's nature. I'm sorry, it's tough. But here's the punchline. The mama then died of a broken heart. Yeah, it just gets to you, man. And you wonder, and there's people out there that will make all kinds of, you know, arguments against God, but I just have to say there's a God. How you can't explain evolution. Please offer me some enlightenment on that one. Right.
No, you can't. Well, Mark, that's a good way to close. And even though it wasn't what we planned on talking about tonight, it was an interesting conversation, as always.
Well, folks, for those of you, Refugee and I have had these types of conversations that span hours and hours and hours. And I hope you found something interesting. And we'll be on track next week to talk. Education is going to be tough. That's so big. I don't know how we're going to. I hope you do a lot of research, and I hope we stay on track because it's extremely emotionally charged. Yet there's a lot of empirical evidence, and I have some collaborators that I have to rein in from time to time. Let me just give you a little preview into some of the things. Last week, we were in Montgomery. And in our little conference calls, one of the persons was bringing forth this case of an Alabama school that was in the top 10, plummeted to 250-something. And, of course, because of Common Core. And I said, time out. I said, are you sure you want to use that as a strategy? I said, because if you do, there's probably a school that was at the bottom that also soared to the top during that same period. And then I borrowed from a little bit of Jordan Peterson. Perhaps Common Core is a cause, but there are, in fact, many causes, and it's just not that simple. You can't just hang it on Common Core. Perhaps there were other factors. For example, the principal, who had been there for decades, left.
Right.
Do you think that might have had a possibly negative...
The team lost its coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to have an impact. Now, as one of the things, and I had a kind of another argument with another collaborator, people commonly believe, and I think it's a reasonable opinion to say that smoking causes lung cancer, right? Then why doesn't everybody who smokes get lung cancer?
Right.
So then I raised this point. Everybody, now we could argue about that all day long, and it's an interesting intellectual intercourse, but there's no conclusion. But my
Right.
point was, wait a minute, Common Core was applied across the state. Shouldn't all of the schools fail equally and should have maintained the same rank?
Right. Right.
This logic, I don't think it's a good strategy. Now, if there's something about Common Core that you want to take exception with, the standards, I mean, I could argue a lot of points, but I sure wouldn't choose that one. This school plummeted to the bottom, and then hang it on Common Core. Anyway.
Well, what I'm going to try to do, Mark, is talk seriously but briefly about a number of key areas where basically what I'm going to be trying to do is first of all, give patriots resources for how they can educate themselves, but also give parents and grandparents resources for how they can educate their kids in certain key areas, because there's a number of them. It's different, and we have to do it. And Mark, one of the ways is sex education, by the way. Sex education generally belongs in the home. I also think it needs to be talked about in church. Whether we want it to be or not, it is being talked about in schools and throughout society, and it's one of the things that's breaking it down. It's one of the things that makes it such a big topic, because you have everything from Common Core to sex education to civics education to all the different things that are going on with it. It's a big topic to kind of tackle and synthesize into a show, but I'm doing my best to do it.
Well, you've got some competition now, because, what we're trying to do, folks, is put together what I would call a card. In wrestling, they have the card. So we got Refugee on Friday night. On this Monday is the debut of Casper Stockham from Colorado, and looking forward to that, and he will be here every week. We've also, Dell Didway is just he's really blossoming. And I think we're putting together a really good team. But with that, you've got competition, because now you've got other people on other nights that you got to outdo. So,
there you go.
That will put you to the test. But I'm just glad we're able to do this, and I look forward to that, Roger, next week, and we'll kind of go from there. And hey, I'm glad Mark, your batteries are holding up, and we'll circle up again before next week and see where things are at.
All righty, Mark. God bless you.
You are the man. Appreciate it, bro.
Okay.
And the magic genie will now make the monitors disappear like that. How's that? Okay. All right. Well, Hazards 4 will be playing our tunes tonight, and thank you for joining us and being with us. I've got an 11-hour shift tomorrow, so I don't think I'll be staying up very late. It's been a very long day for me personally. But thank you so much, and there's so much good stuff coming down the pipe, and I could only touch on a little bit of it, but we'll have some more live segments between now and next week, and we'll sign it off from here, and we are coming to you live on Friday night, right here on PJNET.